Hey guys, this is Noah with Learn Meta-Analysis, and if you're like me, this idea of deep research that OpenAI has been talking about and everyone's talking about on the internet for the last few weeks is really exciting. What is not at all even remotely exciting to me was the price that I found when I was looking at how much OpenAI wants for access to deep research. If you look, it is over here on the right, access to deep research, and they went $200 a month. And you guys probably don't know me that well, but I don't pay $200 a month for pretty much anything. So I started looking for free alternatives to this. And guess what? I found one and it's awesome. So I want to introduce you to Allen AI's ScholarQA. So as you can see here, they have a database of more than 8 million open access papers. So in case you don't know about Allen AI, they're making all sorts of really cool breakthroughs, and they're doing everything open source, or at least almost everything open source. I think they do everything open source. If you go to their GitHub, there is tons of stuff there, including this entire project, this Ai2 Scholar QA. This is available on GitHub if you want to run it yourself. But I am running it through their website. There is a link in the description to get to it. So what this does is it essentially does what I'm going to call deep research, or it's going to do an implementation of deep research, and it's going to do it for free, and it's going to help me. I've been testing it a little bit. You can see I deleted all my recent questions here, but I've run 3 or 4 questions through it and it's been pretty good. So I want to show you guys how this process works and the type of results I've been getting. So this is the question that I am going to use. Actually, that's not the question I'm going to use. That's too easy of a question. This was a question I came up. What is the current state of knowledge about pedagogical agents? And the reality of that is I was testing it in different implementations of deep research across here in Chat LLM's version and a couple other places that claim they do deep research. And what I found is it's just too easy of a question. But there is a hard question that I came up with, which is explain social agency theory in relation to pedagogical agents. So let me tell you really briefly why this is a hard question. Social agency theory exists as its own theoretical construct in the psychology literature. It has nothing to do with virtual characters. It has nothing to do with multimedia learning. We have a different version of social agency theory in the virtual character research and multimedia learning research. And that is what I wanted to find. I wanted to find that. But the thing is, there's not a lot of research on it, and it's not necessarily very specific. It's generally big, broad claims, and there's only a few studies that have gotten more narrow. So when I've tested this across different large language models, including using Dwayne, my own personal large language model or I should say my own personal knowledge base hooked up to a large language model where I connected my Zotero to it. This is a hard question, and this is the main question that I was using to see if Dwayne could actually be useful for me. So let's see if ScholarQA can answer this question. So it's going to keep us updated along the way, and it says that it's going to take up to 3 minutes to do this. So far, it's finding 256 relevant passages from its 8 million plus open access papers. It's doing some re-rank and aggregations, so it's going to get us our top 50. It found 43 that it really likes. We're just going to let this run for a minute. We're going to kick back and relax and think about how great it is that we live in a place where we can get this sort of deep research happening for us, and it's going to save us a ton of time. Not only that, but this service is free. Right? This is free. So before this spits out an answer here in almost no time flat, I want to mention that I would never suggest just taking information from a large language model at face value and copy pasting it into a paper. Please don't do that. It is a large language model. We need to go through and actually check what it's saying. What I think this is really, really great for is, first and foremost, learning if you can have some sort of low-level trust in what it says. So the first thing that I would recommend is ask it questions about things that you know very well so that you can see, is this coming up with answers that you are confident in? And if so, then go into things that are a little bit more complex. So the way that I plan to use this into the future is when I'm working on new areas that I know very little about, right? Typically, I would go collect a bunch of papers and read a bunch of abstracts and then read a bunch of papers, and that's just very, very time consuming. I might spend a whole day doing that, and at the end of the day, in my brain, I have a pretty good framework of what's happening in that field. But what I'm finding is using this tool around areas that I know very well, around this one, which I think is a very tough question, this is going to get me in a very similar ballpark as my all-day reading might do, but in a much quicker amount of time. So let's go through here and see, okay, it's still doing a little bit of thinking, but we can start, oh, it's done now. Okay, so let's start at the top. Background of agency and social agency theory. So agency, it's going to start off with the psychological construct of agency. It brings us into a more recent perspective of it. It talks about social cognitive theory. Great. I don't really care about organizational context because I don't work in that area. So I'm going to minimize this one. Now let's see how it relates to multimedia learning. Framework for understanding. Yes, perfect. How social elements influence learning in multimedia learning environments. Yes, that's exactly what it does. Social cues and messages can activate social conversation schema. Perfect, perfect, perfect. This is literally correct. It is not citing the original paper here, though. This is like the original paper was by Mayer et al. 2003. It's actually this paper down here. So it's citing more recent papers that talked about this and probably cited the Mayer paper. Like I know that I cited the Mayer paper. The other thing that I want to point out is these are all, it gives you the link to the relevant context. And then if you were to click this, you can actually get to Semantic Scholar where it has information about the paper itself. And you can probably go down here and I would imagine there is a way, I haven't actually looked at this page before, but I'd imagine there is a way to get access to this paper through here. I just don't necessarily know exactly what it is off the top of my head because I haven't used Semantic Scholar before. But if nothing else, we have all the information that we need, and it's got this pretty cool little too long didn't read here. Let me see. Oh, it's telling us the too long didn't read about social agency theory. So when social cues are present, multimedia instruction, learners are likely to engage in active learning through three-step blah, blah, blah. In contrast, yeah, this is all true. That goes back to cognitive theory and multimedia learning, which is kind of like the foundation for social agency theory in relation to pedagogical agents and multimedia learning. This is true. This last part, I think you could argue about, but it is definitely, there's research literature that says that. Recent theoretical developments have expanded our understanding. Okay, this is really impressive to me, okay? So this Castle theory is very new. I think it's a 2022 paper for the original Castle paper, and it definitely expands on the influence of social cues and social processes. Really happy that it picked this up. So let's go down a little more. Through pedagogical agents can Brime. Okay, this is great. So this 2010 paper here is a big paper in social agency theory, and it talks specifically about image and voice and the impact of those. So I'm really, really happy that it picked this up here. Let's see if this links us to the correct thing. Okay, this is the correct paper. When I click here, yep, this is the correct paper. You can see view via publisher, DOI. That's how you can get to the full text. Wonderful. Okay, so that was really good. I am really impressed. To kind of debrief here, I was a little thrown off by how it says Schrader et al. When it was only two authors. I was expecting this to say Schrader and Adsope for that paper, but instead it said Schroeder et al., which is okay. We can deal with that now that I know about that. Okay, let's see what it says about their social functions. Yeah, we've had, okay, so pedagogical agents have evolved significantly since their introduction in the 1970s. Okay, that's fair. Through intelligent tutoring systems and virtual learning environments, okay, blah, blah. Particularly in group context, blah, blah, blah. They manage group interactions. Okay, this is not super important to me right now. I mean, it's good information, but it doesn't connect back to the original prompt to the extent that I thought it would. So when I said in relation to pedagogical agents, that's a little bit vague, right? So it gave us background so far. It told us about social agency theory. It told us about some of the social functions of pedagogical agents. Now let's see what the benefits it says are. Enhanced learning, yes, this is the biggest one that people claim. Engagement and interaction. I'm not familiar with these papers off the top of my head. Same thing with social emotional experience. It looks like it's a similar paper, so I'm just not familiar with that paper, so I can't speak to it. But I'm actually going to open that up so I can read it later. Okay, enhanced social support. Okay, I'm not familiar with this paper either, so I'm going to keep that one. Okay. Technical communication and support, and it's citing similar things. Okay, so down here at the bottom, we have this literature comparison table, which I think is quite interesting and useful. It's giving us a little bit more information about each one of those things, and I believe that it does that for each of these. So let's just open up this one. No, only that last one has a literature comparison table. Interesting. I never noticed it before, so I'm not sure. Oh, it's probably because it's talking about benefits and effects. So down here, it's telling you, it's got the some of the positives and negatives that they're seeing down here, and it's all laid out by paper, so that's pretty cool. Ooh, and it has a link to evidence. That's pretty cool too. Okay, Sorry, a little bit of a sidetrack. I never noticed that table before, so I just wanted to mention it and kind of explore it a bit. Okay, so now let's see what it says as our implementation and design considerations. So based on limited available references, and I would agree, there's definitely limited information available about pedagogical agents, social agency theory. It's not a huge area of research in general. And then narrowing it down, social agency theory is even more of a narrow area. So should consider both visual and auditory channels. Yep, I would agree with that. Oh, interesting. I'll add some established knowledge to provide a more complete picture. When designing agents, multiple aspects of appearance. Yes, this is spot on. I would agree 100%. So down here, the visual design should align with the intended audience. Yep, I agree with that as well. Interface design should focus on natural interaction patterns. Yep, I agree. Implementing an appropriate response latency. Yep, I agree. So technical things. Yep, that's interesting. Okay, so how do I feel this did? Number one, this is free. So no matter what, I think it did great. That aside, there's some free things I just don't use because they're terrible. This is not one of those things. This, to me, is very, very impressive. This came up with real references. It came up with good references. It came up with big-time references in the field. So, for example, when I mentioned this paper here, this 2010 paper, if I was asking about voice and appearance, this is the paper I would want people to reference. When I talk about the effectiveness of social cues, this 2003 paper is the paper that I would expect people to reference. I was really impressed it picked up on Castle. It didn't cite Castle, and what I mean is it didn't actually have the direct reference for Castle, but it's very possible that that isn't an open access paper, and that would be why it doesn't have direct access to it, would be my guess. So I am very impressed by this. I'm very satisfied with this. It is free. It is something I very much intend to use in the future. So I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to ask that easy question. So explain what is known about the effectiveness of pedagogical agents for learning. And I'm going to ask this just to show that this is a relatively easy question. And for easy questions like this, which, I mean, we work into new research areas. Let's be very honest. Most of the time, the questions that we have are probably pretty easy questions because we just don't know anything, right? So like, if I was just starting in the area of pedagogical agents, I would want to know what their impacts are on learning. So let's see what it comes up with, and let's see what kinds of references it comes up with, because there's a lot of big review papers, especially from the last few years, that have come out in this field. So this should be an easy question for it. I think it'll probably very much excel based on how it answered my social agency theory question. But we'll give it a minute here just to run, and we'll see what it comes up with. All right, so now it's generating the background. You can see, so like, what I like about this is it's keeping me updated at each step of the process. And realistically speaking, I am extremely impatient. I don't have the patience for waiting this long. So like, if this wasn't giving me results that I was happy with, I would not use this tool. And I know this only takes 2 to 3 minutes to run in total, but in 2 to 3 minutes, I could probably run a Google Scholar search and read through 1 to 2, maybe 3 pages of abstracts. So for me to sit here and wait 3 minutes for it to come up with an answer, I need it to be a synthesized answer, and I need it to be an answer that I feel like is a better use of my time than me skimming abstracts. And so far from my experimentation with this tool, I'd say it's right up there. I'd say I've been pretty impressed so far. But like I said, this is what I think should be an easy question. So let's start going through. It is still running, but let's see what it says for this first block. Pedagogical agents are animated virtual characters that take on instructional roles. Perfect. 100% spot on. They have multiple functions. Yep, I agree 100%. Interface technology is advanced. Yep. They do work as tutors, assistants, or co-learners. That's great. So stems from their ability to positively impact motivation and learning depth. Interesting. That's essentially what we asked for, right? Students who work with pedagogically higher motivation levels and achieve deeper learning compared to those who study without such agents. Okay. So the interesting thing here is I expected this to link to like a meta-analysis or a systematic review when making a claim this big, but there's probably something in their text here where they made a claim like that, but I'm not going to skim this right now. But I am happy that it does give me a real paper to actually go look at. Okay, so let's go to the next one. General effectiveness and benefits. Been demonstrated through several persona effect. Okay. So here's a big thing, right? This persona effect paper in 97 was a big paper. It still is a big paper. It's kind of like the foundation for a lot of the things that have happened in agent research. And this paper, like, I'm very, very happy. Similar to the other one, I'm very happy that it grabbed one of the really, really, really important papers in the field. Okay, the other thing that I like about this, it did not overextend these results. Okay, so this paper specifically talked about student perceptions, but when I see this paper cited, a lot of times people cite it for learning, but that's not what you should be citing this paper for. This should be cited for persona effect having influence on perceptions. Thrilled about how it synthesized that paper. Okay, skimming down here. Studies have shown that students working with agents, stronger engagement, learning outcomes compared to other interventions. Benefits. Okay, so I'll tell you what I like and do not like about this. I would prefer, personally, as a meta-analysis guy and systematic reviewer, I would prefer if most of these types of conclusions being drawn about effectiveness and such were coming from meta-analyses and systematic reviews. But a lot of these are not, at least to my understanding. Okay, this one is a review. It says, what is this? I don't know what kind of study that one is off the top of my head. This is, okay, so let's skim down. It does say recent meta-analyses have confirmed the overall effects are positive, but they tend to be modest in size. That's true. And we did find in our 2013 meta-analysis, yep, that is the correct link, that the effects were stronger for K-12 students than post-secondary. So overall, for an initial getting used to an area and starting to understand it, pretty great. Pretty happy with this. Do I have preferences about, do I wish it cited more systematic reviews and meta-analyses in this section? Sure, but that could also just be my bias towards systematic review and meta-analysis because that's what I do. Okay, so let's look at key design features. Visual representation and complexity, very important. Behavioral characteristics, yep, we do know that gesturing helps. Pointing gestures are particularly effective, that's true. Verbal communication. So this is a big statement. I don't think I've ever read this paper. I'm actually going to save this so that I can look at it later because I don't have any real frame of reference for comparing verbal and nonverbal cues for engagement. So I want to read that paper later. Customization and personalization. Okay, this is interesting. I have not necessarily seen this, but I also haven't seen these papers. So this is why this is so cool, is because it helps me find papers I didn't even know existed before. Okay, so interaction style and feedback, polite agents. Okay, I'm not familiar with that paper either, but that's one of the ones that I saved out of the other one, I think. Okay, cool. So we have lots of great information here, and then here they have this literature comparison table. So it must be that the literature comparison table only comes up for key features and impacts. Okay, specialized types. Okay, this will be interesting. 2 types of agents. Teachable agents. I'm glad that they brought this up. Teachable agents is a really interesting area of research. The effectiveness stems from blah, blah, blah. And it grabbed Betty's brain. I'm really glad that it did. This was a really notable system for teachable agents. Interesting to me, it doesn't have an actual citation for Betty's brain system itself, but it's citing something that talked about it, I think. Okay, so the other side are tutor agents. Yeah, I would say that those are probably the 2 big areas, teachable agents and agents that work as some sort of tutor. There's also agents that work as just lecturers, but I think that a lot of people would probably drop them under the category of tutors. So let's move on. Limitation and debates. Oh, wonderful. Let's see what this says. Several key limitations. One is a technical challenge of speech capabilities. Yes, that is so true. Although it's getting easier. Like the last few years, I've seen some really, really cool innovations in this space. So many current systems are constrained by script-based things. This is also very true. Okay, significant debate about uncanny valley effect. Okay, I would say in pedagogical agent world, people don't necessarily talk about the uncanny valley effect as much as they do in other areas of virtual character research. We do talk about it in pedagogical agent research. I would just say it's not like a huge major thing that everyone's talking about right now. I don't see it mentioned in that many current papers, but I will say it is definitely something that is very relevant and has been discussed. Okay, this is getting at something that is very true, but I think this is very true of a lot of interactive systems, right? So if you have a mismatch between the way that the student asks a question and the way that the agent responds, like if it's not contextually relevant, then students start to lose trust in it. I think that that's something that we'd see regardless if there's a virtual character or not present on the screen. So last but not least, so ongoing debate and consistency of learning benefits. Okay, this is good. If there was one thing that I think is pretty stellar here, it's this. So in the field of pedagogical agents, what we see is a lot of the primary studies find no significant differences between groups in terms of learning outcomes. That's a very common outcome that we might see. But when we do systematic reviews and meta-analyses and we're able to aggregate those scores, we end up finding small significant effects. So on learning, I should say. So this is really interesting that they highlighted this, and I'm glad that they highlighted this issue. So let's look at what they see for factors affecting success, agent role and purpose. I am so glad that this is the first thing that they mentioned. This is, in my opinion, this is the most important thing. Why are you even including this virtual character in the system? Wonderful. I'm glad that they cited Baylor's papers here. These are heavy-hitting papers in the field about the agent's role. Adaptability and personalization, quality of interaction, subject matter, and design implementation. Okay, all these things are great. So let's do a quick rehash on this quote-unquote easy question. So what are the things that I like? I like that I generally agree with the high-level ideas that they are arguing for. Things that I wish were there. I wish there were a little bit more systematic reviews. I wish there were a little bit more meta-analyses. There's a really big agent design framework that isn't mentioned here. But again, I did not ask it about an agent design framework. I said what is known about the effectiveness, okay? So that pretty much brings us back to the whole main point. First and foremost, this is a free tool. This is a free tool that you can use. Second, I think this answers questions pretty stinking well, especially for being free, and it gives me new papers that I didn't know. I mean, for those of you who haven't watched a lot of my videos, I've worked in pedagogical agents for the last 15 years, and there's 3 papers that I got from this that I've never even heard of before. So I'm really excited that I now have new things to go read about in my field that if I didn't use this tool today, making this video, I wouldn't have found those papers anytime soon because I just don't read about that specific area of pedagogical agent research very often. Super thrilled about that. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I think this is going to be something that I use for helping me learn about new areas relatively quickly. And I don't mean deeply learn about new areas. I mean, this is essentially going to help supplement my initial scan of the literature, if you will. So anytime I approach a new area and I want to work in something new, then the first thing I do is I usually go on Google Scholar and I do a quick search, a couple quick searches, and I read a bunch of abstracts and try and get kind of a mental map in my brain of what are people talking about, what's important, and what are some of the big findings. This is going to let me do that in a very quick way. What this does not do, that I think I can get from reading papers themselves, at least as of now, is when I read a paper itself, I can start to see who the major players are in the field because consistent things get cited, right? Consistent papers get cited over and over and over again. I'm not seeing that sort of information in these initial 2 questions that I've asked, right? So like working in pedagogical agents, I know that my paper from 2013 is a really big meta-analysis in the field looking at the impacts of learning. I know there was another one in 2021 that was a big meta-analysis of impacts on learning. I know that in 2011 there was a really big systematic review that talked about the impacts on learning and motivation. So those 3 papers I would expect to see cited when we're talking about effectiveness because those are very broadly cited papers in the field, but they're not cited here. Okay, so those are the types of differences that I see between using quote-unquote deep research with an AI tool versus doing your own deep research yourself. So I am positioning this in my research framework as this is going to help supplement my initial search. When I do an initial search, I'm probably going to start here so that I can get a big, broad idea of the answer to my question. Then I'm going to go to my Google Scholar, and I think I'll be able to have my Google Scholar searches and database searches more refined than they would be if I was starting from scratch. Because usually when I'm starting from scratch, I'm running big, broad searches and I'm scanning a ton of abstracts. I think this is going to help me maybe not fully bypass that stage, but at least get a really good jump start on that stage and help me get to more refined, purposeful searching. And who knows, it might be that you can use some of these tools to help you with those next stages as well and almost set up like a multi-step framework where we're looking at the high level first and then asking more refined questions. But personally, I am not that confident that these types of tools, not necessarily Alan AI's tools, but any of these AI tools, I don't know that they are really able to identify who the key players are in the field. Actually, let's just try it. I'm talking about it. So, what are the major review papers around in the field of pedagogical agents, specifically speaking to their impacts on learning and motivation? This is the main thing that I want to know. Can it identify major review papers and meta-analyses that I know about and I'm confident about from 15 years of working in this field? Will it highlight the things that I also feel are really, really important and should be highlighted? So let's see what it comes up with. It should be done here in just a minute or so, if all goes well. I can't believe I never thought to just ask it this question. Okay, so this is an important paper about intelligent tutoring systems. This is probably my meta-analysis. Yeah, I'm going to close this. Major meta-analyses. Here we go. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it started out by grabbing my umbrella review, which is a review of systematic reviews. Okay, so like if you go read this paper, it will give you the references for every single systematic review we found in the field of pedagogical agents. So that's great. It's also, I think, got a link here to my meta-analysis in 2013. Great. I don't know what this is. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. Gaps in research and focus. Okay, so this is more just talking, not giving me examples. All right, so I'm excited about some things. I'm excited it got us the umbrella review because with a little digging, you can see there's 17 systematic reviews in the field as of the time we published that. You can just go to that paper and get the overview of those 17 reviews real quick. Everything else it's talking about here isn't what I would have wanted, if that makes sense. Let's see learning evidence impact. Small but significant. That's true from 2013 paper. This is also true. This is also true. I don't care about a broader context. We're not talking about a broader context. Motivation and effective outcomes. Let's see what it says here. Generally prefer learning with them when without them. Okay, so this is not this. Yeah. Okay. First of all, my 2014 paper is a systematic review. It's not a meta-analysis, so I'm not sure why it's saying meta-analytic evidence here. So I'm not thrilled about the particular wording that it used, but I am glad I grabbed that paper. It missed a couple really big papers, but I'm assuming that they're just not open access, and that's why it doesn't have access to them. So skimming through here, these are all important things for agents. Okay, so long story short, did this do it? Did it identify the major review papers in the field? Kind of, sort of, not really. So this goes back to what I was saying. I think these types of tools are great for saving us time in the initial stages of learning about a field, getting a basic idea of what's happening, getting a basic idea of the findings. I think for now, these tools might struggle with really identifying who the major players are, what the major papers are in the field. So that's where I think we're limited right now. But, it's just the beginning of 2025. A lot can change in a very short amount of time with large language models and how all these things work. So for now, the way that I see this tool being really helpful, number one, it's free. Free and open source. I'm very much appreciative of that. I love that that exists. Second, I love that this is going to help me get a kickstart on when I start reading about an area for the first time. I am super thrilled about that. I think it's really going to help speed up my initial research into different areas. But like I said, and I've always said about AI tools, you need to verify what they're telling you. You need to read the literature yourself. Make sure, is this what it actually says? But in terms of getting a basic high-level understanding like you would get from skimming a bunch of abstracts, I think this synthesized it pretty well for me in 2 or 3 areas that I know pretty stinking well. So I'm excited to use this tool. I hope that you guys will give this a try. I mean, it's free. It's a free tool, so you're more than welcome to give it a try. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you are one of those people who pays the $200 a month, which I am probably never going to do because I don't want to, if you used OpenAI's tool, I'd be really curious to know, like, are you seeing notable differences in academic context from using OpenAI's tool, their deep research, as compared to this? I'm really curious about that. I am thrilled with what I'm seeing from Alan AI's ScholarQA. I am thrilled. I think these results are awesome. I think this is going to save me a ton of time and energy. And it's also going to help me find a lot of really cool new studies. So that said, I'm going to cut this video here because I have talked way too long for the amount of information that I've given you. And I apologize. If you watch my videos, you know I get excited about talking about things, and then sometimes I just ramble a little bit more than I should. And I try and cut most of my rambling out in the editing. So thank you guys for your support of the channel. Please like and subscribe if you like this video and like these types of tools. I am going to continue searching, and as I find these tools that I think will be useful for you guys, I'm going to continue making videos on them to help share the knowledge. If you find things that are really cool, please share them with us in the comments as well. So thank you guys. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful afternoon.